have the audio on while we're setting up, and we are early today. Holy cow, it's because we don't have a tropical storm somewhere in Florida. Not yet. All right, Sabrina is getting a drink of water.
So I don't have a coughing fit.
Yes. And great, thank you. Hi, Claudia, and hi, Karen. Great to see you ladies on here. We might as well just start. You never know. We're either 10 minutes early or 10 minutes late, right? Okay, you guys, this week, today, Tuesday, and Wednesday, well, first, welcome back. Here I go. Welcome back to Everything Horses and More live podcast. I'm Caroline, Best of the Tao of Horsemanship. You know who this beautiful young woman is over here.
Okay.
Sabrina Arbogast, my co-host. Fantastic. You know, we're all about educating, liberating, and inspiring horse owners around the world. Join our live radio show every week and join our revolution in horse care, handling, training. Let us help you achieve the life, relationship, and ride of your dreams. Because if you all have been tuning in every week, this isn't just about horses, is it? It has so much to do with us and where we are in our mindsets and our hearts. And of course, our feelings, our emotions control our thoughts, and our emotions and our thoughts control our actions. So there's always a cause and effect. So it runs pretty deep. All right.
Did you make sure your microphone's on?
Oh, thank you, my dear. Yep, it's on.
Okay, good.
We are good. All right, we're going to try this position with the microphone. We're just in such a this is a really big room. So it's not the best for sound, but we keep trying. All right, so for those of you that were with us last week, we were talking all about horse training. And today we are going to be continuing that, but more specifically focusing on retraining horses in general, specifically retraining the off-the-track thoroughbred. So today's topic is what you should know before you purchase your first OTTB, off-the-track thoroughbred. And I'm going to be talking about my personal experiences with the 3 thoroughbreds that I rescued from the track. And then tomorrow, I moved tomorrow and Wednesday, Tuesday and Wednesday's topics around, because I thought when I was continuing to write and finish how to resolve trauma and challenges, negative behaviors, and problem solving with our restarting the horse, I realized that really needs to be tomorrow, not last. So tomorrow, Tuesday, we're going to be talking about retraining the OTTB. Of course, this is for any horse. My method, my approach is for all horses. It works for all horses, but we're going to focus on the off-the-track thoroughbred specifically. And tomorrow it's going to be how to resolve trauma, challenges, and change negative behaviors. And Wednesday, how to begin retraining the OTTB, like what are the first steps? How should you go about it? We're going to dive in deep on Wednesday. All right. We are always taking questions. So that's why one of the reasons why we have Sabrina here to help facilitate this process. And so she's looking, at the comments, and we're taking questions. So let's begin. All right, let me get my little cheat sheet here, my talking points. So what you should know before you purchase an off-the-track thoroughbred, or what they won't tell you. So this is based upon my personal experiences rescuing and my clients that have joined my OTTB course. We have a 12-week restarting the off-the-track thoroughbred course, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Of course, we're going to share the link for those of you that are interested in joining that course. But in my experience, predominantly with off-the-track thoroughbreds, it's been negative. And I also know a ton of people, other trainers that specialize in OTTBs, and they predominantly have retrained off the track thoroughbreds that were healthy and a hell of a lot more sound, both physically and mentally and emotionally than what I ended up getting. And we really need to think about this, because when I went in to rescuing, and that's exactly what I did, my 3 OTTBs, and it was Billy, Joey, and Lovey. When I went, I didn't care. I mean, I asked specific questions, but I really wanted to save them. And I also wanted to rehabilitate them, even if they never left me, meaning I never got them into a position where they could end up with one of my students, because when I sold horses, I only sold them to my students because of the method, and I wanted somebody of like mind. Sorry, my 2 kittens are running around and getting into trouble. We might have to kick them out in a minute. But the point I'm making is, it didn't matter to me. I wasn't looking for an event horse, a hunter jumper. I was just looking to save these horses. And at the time that I rescued them, and that's clearly what I did, I didn't adopt them. I got them for free. When I rescued them, I also had a very large training facility. So I was working with rehabilitating horses all the time and restarting horses and starting horses. And I had a ton of students and apprentices. So I had a lot of help, and these horses were great for my program. But I'm not doing those things anymore. Everything I do now it's been done, and now it's given to you guys in content, such as my podcasts and my online training courses. So I don't retrain horses anymore, and I don't take in horses anymore, and I don't take in students unless you are part of my online courses. So the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is because you really need to think about what you're getting yourself involved in. And I always say this to everyone: there's so much information out there. I know that in the equine world, it is overwhelming, and everybody's got an opinion. It's best to educate yourself by taking time to study. Let's say you like me and you like my approach, and you've seen my YouTube videos, and then you've been to my website, maybe you've taken a course. Study, figure out who you want to learn from, because horses, nothing about horses is easy. The cheapest part of horse ownership is buying the horse. Everything else keeps adding up. So we have to put that in perspective when we're, looking at purchasing or adopting or rescuing a horse. We've got to be careful, because you could really be opening Pandora's box of problems, not Pandora's box of possibilities. So we want to look at this with a really clear lens, not an emotional one, but a really, logistical, logical, financial perspective. Because the 2 out of the 3 thoroughbreds that I rescued cost me a fortune, you guys. Cost me a fortune. And even when I did sell the 1 out of the 3, I didn't even make the money that he ended up costing me to rehabilitate him. And not just rehabilitate him physically, nutritionally, as well as I'll bring up what was ailing him. And it was also all the time that I put in to retrain him. And these 3 thoroughbreds I'm talking about specifically, Billy, Lovey, and Joey, are in my OTTB 12-week retraining course. So, wow. So what you should know before, because like I said, most of the time when you go to these retired racehorse projects, I think that's one of the most popular. Most of the time, if not all the time, these guys are out there getting off the track thoroughbreds that are sound. They know what they're looking for. And so most of the people that end up adopting these horses or doing the 90 or 100-day makeovers with them, obviously 9 out of 10 of these horses are sound, and they're not crazy, and they don't have really extreme vices. So, it bothers me. It's great that there's these projects out there to save these OTTBs from the kill pens, from slaughter, and giving them obviously another life, another chance, another career. Of course, that's phenomenal. But there's so much false advertisement though. And, I'm on the other spectrum. I'm getting all the emails and used to get all the students and dealt with all of the horses that were, really the predominant cases of mentally being crippled, physically being crippled, and you don't even realize that until you bring them home and the drugs wear off. So we're going to talk about that. So basically, most of your OTTBs end up in kill pens, you guys. This is really sad. I was researching recently. I'm always researching, as I always say in my podcast, and before I start writing, and I was researching some of the latest YouTube videos that have been circulating out there with racehorses across the world. And it's a horrible industry. And my most recent horrific video was, it was over an hour long, and it was from Australia, their racing industry, and how much lying and deceit goes into it. And they're supposed to ban these horses from going. I forget the words that they use for their kill pens or their slaughterhouses. It's a different word than we use here. And it's just absolutely horrific how many horses they overbreed. Number one, there's so much overbreeding, and overbreeding because it's a gamble, you know, literally they're gambling. So if they breed 20 or 40 babies each year, they're lucky if one of those makes enough money to pay for everything. So they just get discarded, easily discarded. I think in America, especially talking to my international European clients, we in America are one of the better countries. We have a huge animal civil rights, you know, activism going on, and it's really, we do have slaughterhouses. They're just kept quiet, and we have kill pens all over the country, which is really sad. And then we ship them. We ship them to Mexico, which is horrible, and we ship them to Canada. It's absolutely horrific how these horses, I don't know if you've ever YouTubed and looked at these videos, but they are graphic, and they show you exactly what these horses go through. It is just, I cry every time. It is horrifying. And you know, it's just, you just have to, that's why I rescued what I did, knowing that, you know, they may never make it, or they may never be sound, at least not physically sound. I could definitely get them mentally and emotionally. So most end up in kill pens. Lovey, oh my gosh, Lovey. And so Joey was my first off the track rescue that I got in spring of 2013. And then I got Lovey shortly after in 2013. And Joey was 3 years old. And what happened is I was new to the area, new to Ocala, Florida, and I started networking. And my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, was living in Tampa, and that's where I moved to when I first moved to Florida with my only had 3 horses at the time. And so I got to know, you know, the local organizations and nonprofits, and there was a particular vet and his wife, and the wife worked for the nonprofit that I worked with, and the husband was one of the leading vets at Tampa Bay Downs, thoroughbred racing. So that's how I ended up acquiring these horses, is because I was looking to rescue, and the vet put the word out there, and sure enough, I got the first phone call, and it was Joey. Magnificent. Now his registered name is Bless the Soldier, and my husband and I renamed him Joey, just like we renamed Lovey, because we watched, was it The War Horse? Yes. Oh my God, and I cried the whole way through, because the spirit of the war horse and the personality, as soon as I met Joey and we brought him home, I was like, oh my gosh, I love the name Bless the Soldier, but he's just got an amazing spirit. Joey, when I first met him, he was really puffed up, meaning he was bulked up. He still does to this day, looks more like a quarter horse than he does a thoroughbred. And he was spirited, and the trainer, I never met the owner, it was the trainer, brought him out with not one, but 2 shank chains. So he had one over his lip and then over his tongue, and then he had one over his nose. And Joey came out like he was breathing fire, like a fire-breathing dragon. I don't think Joey's 15'3", but muscular, more downhill, real thick, broad chest. I was like, whoa, you know, you're 3 years old and you've won 5 races. This is really scary. But when he brought him out, he just exploded. I mean, I kept my distance because this horse was doing the capriole, leaps and airs, the levade. I was just all fired up. And he was magnificent. Absolutely. I just fell in love with him. Not just his physical, because I didn't ask and I didn't know what I was going to get. It was his mind, his eye, his expression. It was such an immediate connection. So Joey is brought home. I actually trailered Joey home. Yep, I brought Joey home. I'm thinking I might not have. I might have had him. They might have shipped him. I think they shipped Joey. They shipped Joey and Lovey. I brought Billy home. But anyway, so Joey comes to my ranch and he's magnificent, but he's real studly. Like I can tell as I have him separated from the lead horses and the lead geldings that he's real stud-like and real fired up. And I noticed that, you know, while he was puffed up and excited and very social, like real excited to talk and want to sniff noses, he didn't run. He wasn't the type of horse that, you know, like when Lovey came, she ran. She came at 11:30 at night and we had the lights on around the road and the driveway, and she just ran. She was just magnificent. And Billy ran too. Joey didn't run. So I was like, you know, here's this horse that needed 2 chains around his face, which I disagree with, but that's what they do. And he was bonkers when the guy let him out and absolutely uncontrollable, and he's not moving. Oh my gosh. Meanwhile, the trainer had told me that Joey needed to have injections, that he needed to be on hydrolonic acid, that he had a bone chip. You know, of course I asked questions and he was very revealing and he cried. He really loved this horse and he loved his spirit. And he said, this horse is going to need to be on X, Y, and Z the rest of his life. Are you going to be able to afford it? And I'm just taking it all in. And we're talking like $500 worth of medications they were pumping him with. Well, that's all they told me about. This is a thing you guys have to watch out for. When these thoroughbreds that have been racing, when you get them, all the drugs, what drugs wear off? All the drugs wear off. I'm not talking about supplements to help with their, you know, their joints and whatnot. I'm talking about all of the drugs, the illegal drugs they give them and the steroids they give them. It's the steroids that makes these thoroughbreds look so muscular and so amazing in shape. And also it's the steroids that gives them inflammation, water weight, so you don't see their ribs. This is one of the scary things that I realized, is that while these horses supposedly have hay 24/7, they don't want them. They want them to be hungry, you guys, almost starved, and they want them to be crazy because that means the horse is on adrenaline, and adrenaline is a survival pre-flight, as we know, mode for a horse. And specifically in the racing industry, it's all about what? Flight, all about fleeing. So they don't want these horses fed so that they're dopey and sleepy and content. They want them all wired up. So they're pumping them with all these drugs. I did a ton of research, talked with my vets who have a ton of experience. And when these drugs wear off, you know, so does the inflammation, the water weight. And then you've got nothing but all the muscle's gone. Muscles, there's no muscle. Looks like muscle, but there's no muscle. And this happened with not one, but all 3. And I show this in the course that I produced for these guys to show you befores and afters. It's just horrifying. So they're emaciated. They have no muscling, ribby, spiny, and they all have ulcers, absolutely have ulcers. That's one of the things that everybody needs to realize is that, you know, most of our horses, like over 95% of our horses, doesn't matter what sport you do, even your leisure pleasure horses, depending on what's going on, have ulcers, and ulcers can come and go. And with this type of constant stress that they put these thoroughbreds under, their ulcers are there. And so I had no idea that I was getting into all of this. I'd read about it, but until you experience it, and not just with one, but several, not to mention, you know, now all these other people, I'm producing this course years ago, and all these, you know, students are enrolling in it because they're in the same position. So be careful. Like I said, it's great that we have all these nonprofit, obviously all these wonderful nonprofit organizations to help with the retired racehorse programs, but how are they finding these racehorses, and what's happening to the majority of them that are too broken to fix, broken physically and emotionally? It's horrific. So be careful. So the thoroughbred breed, by definition, by nature, it lives up to its reputation, just like the Arabian horse. And the Arab is the original bloodline to all horses, every horse, the Arab. They can trace it back to the Arab. And the thoroughbred is the closest in line, lineage, bloodline-wise, to the Arabian. So just think about this. And the thoroughbred was basically bred, it's a combination, if I'm correct, of an Arabian bloodline and I think an Irish sport horse, something over in Europe, but it was all for racing and longevity, being able to run for long periods when we know the Arab can. So look at the thoroughbred, look how sensitive they are, look how smart they are. I never wanted a thoroughbred. My dad used to have thoroughbreds, and we're from Maryland originally. So my dad, when he was young, after I think it was before he was 10 years old, he had had ponies, but then they started getting these retired racehorses off the track. And so my dad had a ton of them, and they all had issues from ring bone to this to that. My dad really lost a lot of horses along the way when he was young. It was really sad talking to him about that. It was heartbreaking. And the point I'm bringing up, though, is the versatility of the thoroughbred. I never knew they were so amazing. Just the mind, the heart, the athleticism. They're good at everything. Everything. You just have to be careful about when you adopt, rescue, or buy an OTTB. I'm not talking about thoroughbred. I'm just talking about an OTTB. So out of the 3 thoroughbreds that I rescued, 2 of them had more woe than go. Would you believe that? 2 of them. And if those poor boys had never been trained to race, think of the potential. It would have been amazing, amazing physically what you would have been able to do with them, and mentally what they would have enjoyed doing. Absolutely amazing. And so while the thoroughbred is specifically the bloodlines for racing, I mean, they're bred for obviously the agility, the ability to win races, but they're also bred for the mindset. And what I found interesting with the 2 boys out of Lovey is, and Lovey just wasn't fast enough, but that's a whole nother story. If I had looked at Lovey as a full a filly, I would have known that she would have never been a racehorse, because she was so close to the Arabian bloodline. When you see the dish in her face and the way she floats, she has extra hang time in the air. That's not a good racehorse. Use your common sense. You want a horse that's going to cover ground like a cheetah. You know, that hind end is going to come underneath the front end, and just like my little baby, who's both parents race, but he's obviously mine. He's not a racehorse. I got him way before that would have ever happened. But anyway, so thoroughbred bloodlines, they're just amazing. And there really is a lot to say about investigating the dam and the sire and the grandparents, and looking at their personality and their traits, especially because it's going to really give you an idea about the natural inclination, or what your horse is going to really be interested in, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. So with a thoroughbred, they have a high work ethic, usually very high work ethic, and you have to be careful about that, especially with training. And we're going to talk later in tomorrow and Wednesday's podcast about training, because it's all in the approach, you guys. To me, horses need to learn the same things to make them well-rounded and well-balanced. So I have a system, and I have a program, I have a school that all horses go through, from gated to non-gated. Donkeys, mules, they all got to learn the same thing depending on what you want to do with them, right? But it's the approach that matters. And so it's like any learning environment, even for us, right? even when we go to school or we go to a conference or we go to a 3-day, again, either a conference or what do we want to call it? I used to do it when I had my other business. I would go to learn a new application or program for design, and you're all learning the same things, but everybody's going to learn differently. So it's really up to the teacher to take the time to make sure that each student is learning. It's really important, but we all got to learn the same things so we can go out there and compete for the same jobs and be hired for the same job. So to me, the thoroughbred is an amazing learner. They learn very quickly. Horses do in general. They learn very quickly. And I have found with thoroughbreds, specifically because of the nature of their work ethic, it's just part of the breed. You don't need a lot of routine. So they can get bored, they can get frustrated. You have to be really and very anxious. You have to be really careful, because once they get it, they have a tendency, because of their work ethic, like an overachiever, they have a tendency to anticipate, assume, offer it. So you have to be really careful. And I see the way people train thoroughbreds, their approach to training. All of our breeds are different. There's similarities because they're horses by nature, right? Just the nature of the horse, the psychology of the horse is very similar as a species. But you have different bloodlines, and you have different personalities, and you have different traits and different character and different cognition, cognitive abilities. So these horses, you've got to know your breed. And so people really have a tendency to overface the thoroughbred, overwhelm them, and create even more of an anxious, hypervigilant, so to speak, spooky horse, when they really can be so, like when you look at Lovey on my YouTube videos, oh my gosh, Lovey's like asleep until I ask her to do something. And if I'm not careful how I ask her after all these years, and she's 10 this year, and I got her when she was 2. I'm not careful how I ask her, I can overwhelm her. She can get frustrated, or she can get anxious. Now, 10 is the ripe age when horses really mature emotionally, mentally. And so I know it's only going to get better, like a fine wine with Lovey, that she's going to get more confident. Not to mention, we've had almost 2 years off from training. And when I first got her, she had a year off because she was such a mess. So she hasn't had consistent training. I don't believe in that anyway. You need to be consistent, but you don't need to drill it and work your horse to death. There's times when you need to take a break. So that's my take and understanding and experience right now, just with the bloodlines and the breed itself. And then when you get the off the track thoroughbred, you're like, oh my God, but the thoroughbred is such a great, smart, versatile horse. They're so athletic, they're tall, they can be great for jumping, eventing, dressage. And then you go, oh, but here's an off the track thoroughbred and it's free, or it doesn't really cost anything. And look at it move. Yeah, it's all pumped up on drugs and steroids and painkillers, you guys. So when the horses come home off the track, 9 out of 10 times, it's not the horse that you saw. And so with Joey and Billy, they both suffered, and I never heard of this before. I actually guessed it and then confirmed it with my vet at the time. They both suffered from stress founder. Have you ever heard of that? I had heard of foundering. Oh yeah, foundering from up north. Right, Sabrina? Grass is too rich. Watch out for spring and fall. You'll get laminitis. They'll colic. They'll founder. Navicular. Heard of navicular. These are all similar, but stress founders. So I was like putting two together. And Joey was so bad. So what happened the first month, we were putting him out by himself, and he was not reactive at all, except for nickering and talking and wanting to socialize. Then I started that first month to put him in with one of my gelding, my herds of geldings, and he got a little too rambunctious and stallion-like, not trying to mount, but just being a little too like aggressive and scary. Oh my gosh. And so I had to yank him. And I'm like, you're not ready. You don't know how to be socialized. I really don't know how early, when did they yank you? You're 3, for God's sakes. You've been racing for at least a year. So then I started to see him. He started, and this, when I got him, it was spring. We didn't have a lot of grass growing. Grass really doesn't come in if you have a hard freeze, and we had a really cold winter here in 13 in Florida, in Ocala. So we didn't have a lot of rich grass growing at all when I got Joey. I thought for sure he was getting laminitis because all of a sudden I found him out in the pasture standing like this with his front legs out in front of him, just like he was laminitic. And then he could barely walk. And before you know it, within that first 30 days, he was stall bound and 2 to 3 feet of shavings. Oh my gosh. I had several specialists come out that I couldn't afford. And I happened to have 2 guys from the track that were working for me and bartering services, and they had a wonderful farrier. So it took a while though. So basically Joey was on bute, Banamine, he was stall bound, he was lying down often, he was in so much pain. He had rotation. I think it was only 3% in one and 6 in the other front. He was in so much pain. So I'm pretty sure, this is a long time ago, right? So we're talking 7 years ago. I'm pretty sure that within the first month of being stalled, and then of course his body looked like hell. Like he lost all of his muscling and he had a roach back now. He was ribby yet bloated. I mean, he was just a mess. And I'm giving him 24/7 hay and a hay nets. He's got the best he can have right now. And there were 2 instances where I was afraid he wasn't going to get up. That was really sad and scary. Basically the 2 guys from the track, now I'm asking questions, right? Now I want to know what the hell really goes on over there. So man, they were telling me stories that would just blow your mind. And that's why they found me. I mean, they didn't want to be at the track. They were poor too. Don't get me wrong. They gambled most of their money, but they didn't want to be at the track. And the ranch where I rented this huge ass barn, 50 acres, a house, had a 1/4 mile track. So they were really great. They had 2 stallions, and they never went out except when they were exercised or the guys did some round penning, but they had such a great relationship with these 2 stallions. They were so well mannered. They loved these horses and they did not want to train them the traditional way, which is really barbaric and would blow your mind. That's a whole nother podcast of stories, you guys. So they called in one of their favorite farriers from the track who was semi-retired, and between him and me and the vet, it took about 6 months for Joey. That takes about 7 months for the hoof to grow out and really to be able to change the whole hoof. What we found out was Joey had stress founder. And so what that means, and I did notice when I got him, but I didn't ask any questions because I didn't know. You only know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't realize when I first saw Joey, I did notice that 2 out of his 4 shoes were really loose, if not freaking hanging off. And I thought that was really messed up. But there were too many things going on in my head. I was trying to look at too many other things and ask other questions. And I just thought we could take care of that. But I didn't realize until closer examination that Joey had a long toe and no heel. No heel. This is why it's called stress founder. So think of the horse constantly landing. Here I am. Here's like my hand represents the hoof and my wrist represents the pastern. So they should have like a natural angle. And Joey was like basically here landing on his heel, because in a lot of the thoroughbred ignorance in racing, they think that the longer the toe, the easier it'll be for the horse to grab hold of the footing and reach further in their stride. So they don't want they don't want any heel. So think of how he was hitting, what was hitting his navicular bone. Oh my God. I mean, basically this horse was going to be, if the trainer didn't love him, this horse was going to be, you guys go to kill pen and get slaughtered, because they knew he was going to die. He was going to have navicular, or the coffin bone was going to go through the hoof, or he was done. Not to mention he had bone chips in the knee, which aren't bad unless the body reabsorbs those bone chips, which they've done now. Oh my gosh. So, listening to myself and being very intuitive and having enough experience to ask questions and not just accept specialists, because specialists want to cost a fortune. Yes, we were icing Joey's feet. We were wrapping them. We were doing everything you could without paying $1,000 a month for a specialist to come in. And we didn't need one. But our little angel was the farrier from the track, because he was coming in every week and doing small, little, minute rebalancing trims. Plus, I was giving Joey whatever extra farrier's formula to grow out his hoof. You know, I was doing everything I could holistically. It was frightening. But Joey's now 11. And when we did the OTTB course back in 2017, and filmed, that was when Joey was finally, 4 years later, at the age of 7, going on 8, able to go into a 90-day riding foundation program, my riding foundation program. And then Billy was also a stress founder case, just not as severe. And Billy was able to go into it. And then you see Lovey. So, oh my gosh. Do we have any questions?
No.
No questions.
No, everybody's just listening.
It was frightening. And then we got Lovey. So I think that was we moved into the ranch in March of 2013, my students and me, and started to rebuild the business, bring it down here to Florida. Then I got Lovey like 2 months later in May. So here's Lovey. Billy came last. So Lovey, they'd heard about me. Now the owner texts me. I don't even know who Lovey's owner is, right? I get this text from this guy holding Lovey with these big donkey ears, and she's all emaciated, and yet she's got the sweetest face. And he's like, you referred to me. You're my last hope. They've ruined her. Lovey's 2 years old. They ruined her. Will you please take my horse? I'll ship her to you. This is, again, Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay Downs. All these horses came from there. So I was a little smarter this time. First thing I asked is, send me pictures of her feet. Let me see her hooves. I wasn't going through that again. She had magnificent feet. She never had shoes on. Lovey's feet are like, aren't they? They're huge. Yeah. They're beautiful. She had tons of heel. So what happened with Lovey is she went into training. This is horrible. They all do at 1 year of age. Whatever age they are in January, and Lovey is born in January. This is disgusting. Kid could be 9 months old, you guys. This is disgusting. But Lovey was in a year of training for the track. She only had one start, one release. She was just in training for a whole year, and look what they did to her. And the reason why she didn't make it is she wasn't fast enough. Well, knowing enough about horses like I do, I could just watch her float like an Arabian and know that she has too much air time, hang time. There's no way. So anyway, she is by far my best Liberty horse and up and coming dressage horse, by far. Jumper, no. To me, out of the three of them, Lovey is phenomenal. I mean, I am blessed. And obviously sound physically, and her training development with me has been super, super slow. Mentally and emotionally, she still has some PTSD. And as I've experienced with so many rescue and rehabilitation cases in all breeds, non-gated and gated, that the PTSD can last a lifetime. It just gets easier for the horse, much easier. The triggers are less and less and less. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow, how to rehabilitate them, the depth of rehabilitation. So Billy, when I got Billy back in 16, I think Billy was only 7, and I appreciated, again, he had horrible feet. I knew that when I took him. Again, he came, when you look at my YouTube video, I think it's retraining the OTTB first round pen. in there with Billy. That was the first month. But again, when the drugs wore off, he looked like shit. He never looked like that video again, never. So what happens is they fill him up with all these steroids basically. And to get him to run, there's some, I guess it's legal to some limit, but it creates inflammation. And so when you get these guys off the track, they look so well muscled. And then when it goes away, the drug, you see their spine. They usually have a roach back from the breezing, which is the exercise people. They're slamming down on their backs when they're doing the posting trots, not the jockeys. And see, Lovey never had any of that, thank God. But she was emaciated. She was absolutely deplorable when I got her because she was so stressed out. And they all are stressed. So then we had to fight Lovey's ulcers. And I gave her a year off to just let her be a horse and just handled her and build a relationship. I mean, Lovey was a mess. You couldn't touch her. She was in so much pain with the ulcers. She came with a fungal. Her fungus was so bad. She had no hair. They never bathed her after they rode her. So her whole saddle line from sweat was, I mean, she had to be isolated and quarantined for a month when she came to me because she was completely, it looked like she had ringworm. They were afraid of that. And then wherever the saddle pad was, she had no hair. It was nothing but rain rot. They had never bathed her, you guys. Not to mention she was emaciated when she came. They were starving her because she was done. They didn't want her. So I guess the owner basically came and visited his horse and found her in horrible state. Her feet had not been trimmed. They were very big and very long. That was a blessing, but they had not been trimmed. And when she first got dropped off at 11:30 at night, my husband now was my boyfriend. We put her in the stall at first, but all she did was basically run around the stall with diarrhea everywhere. And then she would stop because I was grounding. She wanted to come in and find some level of connection and safety. And that's when my husband named her Lovey because she was such a love. But then she'd get all worked up again. I mean, she was just hyperventilating. It was a mess. To this day, if Lovey gets anxious, she hyperventilates. So Lovey and Joey were this close to becoming cribbers. Billy was a cribber. Of course, they didn't tell me that. And he was a horrible cribber, one of the worst I've ever seen. But both Lovey and Joey were this close to cribbing. And when I know or don't realize when I'm working with Lovey and schooling her and developing her, if I push her too hard, and we have many pauses where she can process, if I push her too hard, to this day, she'll go to suck on something. So, yes.
Haley would like to know, she would like to hear more of your experience transitioning OTTBs from being shot to barefoot. She knows you have a video that, but she hasn't watched it.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Haley. Haley's one of my mastery membership students. So that's a great question. Immediately their shoes were pulled. So when you're looking to transition a horse from being shod, having shoes, to barefoot, in these cases, they had no hoof wall. That's something else we have to talk about. And I talk about it, I think I do, in the Mastery Membership Holistic course. But listen, they have no hoof. Thoroughbreds are notoriously known for having very thin hoof walls, you guys. Lovey is an exception. And you can visually, so is my baby, you can visually look at their feet and just see how thick they are. You can just see it. You don't need to turn the hoof up and look at the actual toe, how much toe they have. You can see it. And then when you would look at Billy or Joey's feet, it didn't matter how much Farrier's formula or supplements you were to grow them out, they were just crumbling and cracking and peeling. And it didn't help that Billy had more white and these other guys have more black, because not traditionally, but if you guys don't know, white hooves are weaker, period. That's just the genetics of the white hoof. A dark hoof is stronger and more solid. So, we had to transition them immediately, Haley, because they had no hoof wall, and it was disgusting. So it's hard. Well, I mean, Joey was in a stall with 2 to 3 feet of bedding, so we didn't have to worry about what that was going to feel like, right? He had cushion, And same thing with Billy, when all the drugs wore off and he started to go lame and we had to yank the shoes, same thing. He came the same kind of feet, deplorable, half his shoes were falling off, or he came with 3 shoes and not, one was gone. So you just give him a lot of bedding. And I am total advocate of some sort of farrier's formula, because it not only helps the hoof grow out, but it helps to strengthen the hoof. And it doesn't have to be that brand name, because the other thing is not every supplement works for every horse. So while farrier's formula worked great for Joey and a couple of other horses that I've had along the way, it did not work for Billy at all. And I had to use a different supplement, which was phenomenal for him. So I don't bother transitioning. And the same thing with feed. I never transition feed. They go hardcore. Out of the thousands of horses that I've worked with and rehabilitated and have been with me for long periods of time in training, they've never been slowly transitioned over. They get switched immediately. And now that we're on this amazing new feed program, well, it's been over a year now, but all of my students are learning it too, where it's all natural and organic. It's just like grass or really good quality alfalfa hay. So they can go transition straight into it and not worry about slowly being moved over from a grain diet to a non-grain diet. So yeah, there was no transition. We had no choice. And you just do your best to give them a lot of soft cushion. And of course, when Billy would be ready, or Joey, to walk out of the stall into the aisle, it was baby steps. It was horrible. So Billy was always on the end stall so that it was easy on the concrete to get him from the stall to grass. I mean, you just have to be very proactive in these situations. So a lot of bedding, some type of formula to help their hooves strengthen and grow. And then if you can put them in a stall closest to the exit so that they don't have to walk across a hard surface. Yeah, it's just the way it goes. But Joey was horrible. I mean, we had boots, ice boots. I mean, I was not going to pay for a therapeutic shoeing. I didn't have the money, because when I moved to Florida and was renting this big place, I had to bring the business here. I wasn't prepared for the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. God love this horse that he cost me. I still have him, of course. I love him. That's a great question, though. So anyway, most of these OTTBs have different layers and levels of trauma. And the 3 that I rescued all had PTSD, severe. Joey was so aggressive in his stall around food. You can see the switch in these guys where they don't see you. They don't recognize you for who you are because it's a trigger. And Joey would pin his ears and bite at you and just come into your space. I mean, we would have to go in with a riding crop. Doesn't mean we had to touch him, because he was absolutely petrified of crops and lunge whips, petrified. So, but we couldn't just do this. At first I'm like, oh, path of least resistance, always just put your hands up. That just made him more aggressive and he was coming after you. So I'm all right, let's try the whip, for God's sakes. And he'd throw himself up against the back of the stall and just blink and shake his head. I mean, he was just ready to get clobbered. That's another horrific thing that happens to these horses on the track. Remember, they're going to do whatever they can to get these horses on flight mode. And not only was this my suspicion, and because I've worked with so many damaged horses in every industry and every breed, you guys, the OTTB was new to me though in 13. And when those guys, thank God I had those guys come and work for me, because they validated all of my suspicions. So, like Lovey was deathly afraid of the sound, the noise, and a plastic bag or a paper bag. She still has issues, deathly. Okay, no, I worked with so many baby horses. You're the one that creates that fear. There is no reason why they're afraid of a bag. If anything, they try to eat it. And some of them swallow it and they just poop it right out. Lovey, I mean, you could have thrown her up against the back of the stall. She was ready to go just ape shit. Joey, it was whips. And Billy was a very different, totally different temperament. And he definitely was never abused. I could really tell that Billy was never abused. Yes, ma'am.
Lydia, what happens when the farrier trims and rounds the toe too much? Also, there's not much heel left either.
Ugh. Well, first of all, this is across the board in my experience, because since I created those videos for you guys in your master membership program, Lydia, I've been through several farriers since then. And yeah, oh my gosh. So, and it would be good for Ariella, who's on our program too, since her husband is a master farrier and natural and barefoot, I actually want to have him in on a podcast to share his knowledge with all of us. But in my experience across the board, you want long heel, it makes sense, and you want a shorter toe. But yes, a horse can become lame by too much. You want very little heel. You really don't want to touch the heel. I've seen phenomenal farriers really trim down the heel, and I've never had a lame horse, and they've done it for the sole reasons of copying Pete Ramey. I think Pete Ramey was the first farrier that studied the wild Mustangs and came up with his own method, and it's like universal, the Pete Ramey method. And so he studied why wild horses never needed their feet trimmed. They were self-trimmed. And one of the reasons is because they were, obviously they're traveling up to 20 miles a day, right? So they get plenty of use. Their hooves are being ground down, but it's the way that they are moving that it actually scoops out, like the sole was actually scooped out. But then I've also had farriers tell me, don't touch the sole, and very minimal. And of course you want the frog to be higher than the sole, because that contributes to pumping blood, which is very important. And you want a long heel, because it's just like if I had really long fingernails and I went to type, look at the horrible leverage and angle I'd be straining myself. And so the longer the toe, the worse the angle it is to support your horse, but also you need a shorter toe and a longer heel. And I forget the bulbous area back here, right above the back of the heel, where the pastern starts. I know it and I can't think of it, but that's their shock absorber. So the longer the heel, the more assistance they have with absorbing shock, movement. Now, what do you do if your farrier doesn't give your horse a shorter toe and a longer heel? You talk to them. You ask them why not. And I counsel my students all the time. They're afraid to lose their farrier, because farriers can get really irate, pissed off. Their egos get hurt when you ask too many questions. But honestly, when it comes to your horse comes first. So figure it out, you guys. I don't know what to say. I mean, I've been through 5 farriers now in 2 years, and I'm hoping that this guy stays. But across the board, you can have really nice, easy, polite conversations and just tell your farrier that I'd like a little bit of a longer toe, Lydia, because if you do cut it too short, it's just like tearing off our fingernail at the quick. Mm-hmm. That means he's cutting off too much toe. And even if rasping the toe isn't that bad of a deal unless you start seeing the flesh. It's that, and if you cut too much of the toe, rasp too much of the toe, as well as the heel, you'll bruise it, and you'll see the bruising along the front of your toe and or the heel. I've seen this, it's horrible. And that's why I fired them. They've either bruised the front, which is just like tearing your fingernail off to the quick, or they bruise the sole, which can frickin' create navicular or the coffin bone coming through, founder. You guys, they need the thickness of the sole to keep everything. It's a balancing act. Okay, so it's those 3 areas: the toe, the heel, and the sole are so important. I hope I answered that question. Lydia, if he's going too short, and not enough heel, you've got to talk to him and figure out, is he worth keeping? If he's not, then you can decide how you want to go about this. I like to educate myself before I bring up anything, because it's a man's world with farriers predominantly, and a lot of our farriers tend to be They might be really well educated in their field, but they don't have a lot of couth and they don't have a lot of respect for women. And so, I mean, I see that everywhere still. So you really want to educate yourself as much as you can to have a really healthy conversation, so that you guys, they don't just say, oh, well, that's the way I do it, or what, you don't know what you're talking about, or this is the way. Well, no, it's not the way. You know, over and over again, time and time, I'm seeing, well, you shouldn't be looking at the internet. Well, the internet is now our library. That's where we go to learn. So yes, another question.
We have 2 more.
Oh, great.
So Becky Wilkinson, have you seen a difference in the host with the new feed program?
Yeah, oh, hi, Becky. Yeah. So Becky, the new feed program is amazing. And I am not a nutritional expert or nutritionalist. So you guys would have to look up Dr. Jeff with a G, Jeff, G-O-F-F Tucker. He lives in Florida. He is an international. He knows, I don't even know the man. And he's already heard how much, it's like how much I promote him. He's an international farrier and nutritional specialist with horses. And yes, the new feed program helps the emotions, the coat, the dapples, the shine, the texture of the horse's hair, the behavior, because of the insulin and the metabolic reasoning behind the feed, how it just stabilizes and balances the horse, especially the soybean meal. Got to have that with the natural, the alfalfa pellets. But yeah, of course it helps with the hooves, but not like I've seen it in other areas. Between the hair growth and the shine and the behavior, those are the 3 prominent areas that I've seen this feed program totally change, especially horses that have insulin issues, metabolic issues. It's like me being hypoglycemic. If I eat sugar, it's going to make it worse for me, and my body's going to crave those carbs or sugar. But if I eat protein, and I eat mostly protein, that's what works best for my blood type, then it stabilizes me and I don't go through the mood swings and get dizzy and see spots and have sweats and all that fun stuff. It's the same for the horses. But no, I can't say that it's changed. I know it's helped, but I mean, some of my horses have, like Legends, just pigeon-toed, and now that he's crippled, you know, he's wearing his hooves differently. So I can't really say that it's helped in that area. Another question?
Yes.
But Jeff Tucker would be, like I said, for $50, you guys can join his feed program, and then you have access to his private Facebook, and he'll answer your questions there. Mm-hmm.
Diane, is it common for the frog to slough off a layer?
Yes, that's correct. You actually got it right. My German, West Virginia, Georgia, redneck. You said it, not me. I love it. You're so cute. So yes, Becky, great question. The frog is supposed to, that's why you want the frog longer than the sole of the hoof, okay? So that the frog can not only pump, get plenty of, what's the word I want to say, stimulation and pump blood, but it will naturally slough off. Now, my guys, frogs, you know what, Becky, this might answer your question. I have noticed that the sole of my horses, yes, and the frogs of my horses have been growing crazy. Maybe not the toe or the thickness of the wall, but the sole, big time. And the frog. So my farrier has actually had to trim the frog, still allowing it to be thick, but trim it a little bit. And we have to, because we can get so much moisture here that they get deep cracks, and then thrush gets in there. So we are actually always trimming the frog, especially where the sole is, because of that deep crack. Sundance and Zor have it the worst in 2 of their hooves. But it's better this year because we finally have the best farrier so far. Hopefully he stays. All right, great questions about the feet. So back in the day, when horses were the primary means of agriculture and transportation, you guys, guess what they always looked at and cared about? The hooves and the teeth. Yeah. So horse without teeth, might as well kill them. they're no good. And a horse without hooves, same thing, good feet. So good feet and good teeth were always a priority with horses. And it's no different when you're going to purchase any horse, doesn't matter. Look at their feet, look at their teeth. And especially I'm better at feet than I am teeth. And obviously you got to get in there and feel it or look at it, which is always hard to do. And I don't care if the horse has been floated and had, just been floated. That guy's quality, just like everybody else, your farrier, your trainer, whoever it is, that quality may not be where it needs to be. So when I get a new horse, I always want to know, I want all of their records, and these thoroughbreds never had their dental done. It was horrible, the lack of dental. And that will also attribute to a horse not being able to keep weight on if their teeth are sharp. And especially being young, you've got your, up to the age of 5, young horses shed their teeth every year. They shed both the top and the lower. And so that means new teeth are coming in and pushing out the older teeth for 5 years. So just think about how disproportionate that is and unbalanced. That's why they need more than older horse. They need to be floated twice a year, at least checked for sharp edges, because it really does make a difference in the horse's ability to maintain weight, to eat and maintain weight. So it's just crazy. These poor horses are just a commodity. The racing industry is a sin. So basically, let's get back to most of the OTTBs, like I said earlier, that I have had experience with, and this is based upon my students. 95% of them have trauma, whether it's physical or mental or emotional or all three. And so you really have your hands full. You really do. Now, to me, most of our horses, period, have trauma. So it was a no-brainer for me. The program that I've created works for every horse in every situation. The biggest problem for me when I got the OTTBs was my lack of experience with the damage of the racing industry on them physically. The physical damage, the emotional and mental I was used to. I'd seen it in every breed of horse that I'd worked with, but it was the physical. I'd never seen such broken down horses. It's just horrifying. So you need to ask questions, and even then they're not going to tell you the truth. Like when I got Billy, I had it out with the trainer, I can't remember which one he was, and had it out in a couple of texts and in a phone conversation where I ended up hanging up on him, because I'm like, you never told me this horse was a cribber, not to mention a horrible cribber, like 24/7. And which is going to be really hard for him to eat and maintain his weight, which also tells me he's got ulcers because he's trying to relieve himself of stress. And then the whole stress founder thing. So of course the guy wanted the horse back, and I basically told him to go pound sand. That's not the point. I'm not giving this horse back, but you're a fucking liar. Hope you go to hell, rotten hell. And what you did to this horse, rotten hell. So Billy came with pin firing. So I did see these little white scars along their cannon bone is in the front. So it'd be along the sides of their cannon bones. And basically pin firing, from what I learned, is a really extremely painful way of avoiding surgery, but stimulating the horse's nerves so that they reattach. So it's like a fracture, so obviously he had a fracture, and Joey did too, but it didn't even matter with Joey, because I just wanted to keep him from being put down because he was so lame. Oh, by the way, Joey self-corrected. Before we put him into the 90-day retraining program in 2017, of course I had him x-rayed, and he completely self-corrected. Isn't that amazing? Thanks to the care and the correct trims, the correct farrier. You can do that if they're young enough. Yes, ma'am.
Claudine would like to ask what to look at the mouth and teeth. They all need dentists. I think what I think she's trying to say is, what do I look at when looking into the mouth?
Good question, Claudine. And like I said earlier, the mouth is really hard. you really need an equine dentist to come in and do the exam for you and show you, because they need to prop the mouth open. I mean, all you can do is look at the front teeth and the bottom teeth and just see basically how old they are. Do they have all of their teeth? Of course, you're going to see if there's a tattoo on the upper lip of your OTTB, which will allow you to make sure. You always want to get the registration papers or a copy of them. And that's really so that you can have more of the history. A lot of all three of these guys, when they gave me a copy of the registration papers, they would only give me a copy because they never wanted these horses to race again. So it's interesting. Like, I was like, wow, you really care about this horse, but obviously you don't, because look what you did to him. It's crazy. The denial or the ignorance, or it's just this disassociation that these guys have with these OTTBs. But you can't. I mean, the teeth are really hard. I can visibly see the feet, right? We can look, the feet are outside the mouth. You can see the feet, and that's a lot easier to see how good or bad the feet are. But the teeth are really hard, and you need somebody to come in there. But to me, that's not that big of a deal. You know, you'll do that when you purchase the horse, because really, what are you looking for with the teeth? If they're sharp, it's just going to keep the horse from eating as much as they need to, and keeping them from taking in the amount of calories. So you should be able to look at the horse and say, oh, this horse looks really ribby. Is it ulcers? Is it his teeth? That's how you'll assess. But you'll be fine. I mean, there's no way. It's not like getting a 27-year-old horse like I have with Legend and they're starting to lose their teeth. So I really wouldn't worry about getting the teeth examined until you get the horse. Just know that the teeth can cause the horse to lose weight. So you're just looking at the physical right now. So yeah, you guys can ask all the appropriate questions, like how many years have they raced? You know, how old are they? How many races have they won? And you'll be lucky if they tell you the truth. That's why you want a copy of the registration. Or if the tattoo is easily visible, you can look them up, and then you can get an actual real record of the history of their training and their racing and if they won. But you need to look for scars, these little white marks along their cannon bones, front and hind legs, because it tells you predominantly, most likely, that they've been pin fired. And that means that there has been some stress fracture of some kind. And you need to look for bad vices, which is hard. I never saw Billy cribbing in his stall when I went to go meet him. He was just eating, but he was eating. And yeah, I never saw that. That's really weird. But as soon as I got him, after he was done running around and looking beautiful, he was cribbing on his water bucket. He was cribbing on everything you could imagine. Now, through my method of developing and rehabilitating, I would say that I was able to reduce the cribbing by 50 to 75%. Doesn't mean that if Billy got overfaced or worried or anxious, like when he met his next owner, one of my students, he did start cribbing when she moved him. In the beginning, he cribbed a lot more. New environment, different person. Even though she spent months working with him and getting to know him, he's now in a new environment with new horses. They don't treat him the same. He got along great here. He was in a hierarchy. So those things really added to Billy's stress, and he started cribbing all the time. So that's a tough one. The cribbing's tough. And the drugs, you're not going to know until at least 30 days. So I always recommend that you guys get a 30-day, and good luck if you can even return them, a 30-day or even a 60-day, my brain, I can't think of it, trial period. Believe me, they didn't want these horses, so there was no trial period. I was either taking them or they were going to be put down. It's really horrible. Now, what I also recommend is, I do recommend this and I don't, it just depends. It didn't matter to me. I was rescuing these guys. So I didn't need to see how they moved. I didn't need to ride them. I would not have ridden them. They were loco. And I would have ridden Billy, who had the best, the calmest temperament, not the best, just the calmest temperament. But Billy didn't know anything. These guys don't know anything. They don't know how to steer. When they have a bit in the mouth, they're not comfortable with the bit because they're used to everybody keeping out of their mouth, for the most part, believe it or not. But I know we see horrible pictures of how they put the bit, you know, they tie the horse's tongue. We do this in showing and in racing. They tie the horse's tongue down so the horse can't flip the bit under their tongue. If the horse flips the bit under their tongue, then the horse has total control. Remember, the bit's supposed to control the horse. So I've seen it all. I have seen it all with these guys. I don't recommend, if you're going in and saying, I don't care what the outcome is, I want to rescue this horse, then it doesn't matter how he's moving. Just know that these racehorses, ex-race horses, don't know shit, you guys. Okay, they don't know. All they know is they've been broke for a jockey. They get exercised or breezed every day that they're not racing, and 9 out of 10 of them have horrible backs because you'll get somebody with my weight, short ass stirrups, so I can get in a jockey position when I'm galloping them on the track. But before I get to the galloping, I'll be posting in these short ass stirrups. This is horrible. So you can't post in short stirrups because your foot's going to be in front of you, not underneath of you. What does that mean when your foot's in front of you with short stirrups? You're slamming down on that horse's back. This is what, and you guys see that in the Mastery membership program under the Holistic Care Guide. You see my chiropractor working on Joey, and you see his roach back. It's horrible. Jockey doesn't create that. The jockey weighs 90 pounds and he's lifted off of the horse the entire time. The jockey only rides the race most of the time. Most of the time, the jockeys do not train or breeze these horses. It's people no bigger than me, and I'm a $150, no bigger than me. But you can't do a rising trot unless you rise from your knees, not your feet. And your feet are underneath of you. So you go straight up and come down soft. Now, when I had my facility at the ranch and I was renting, we had that 1/4 mile track. And one of the renters, what did they do? They started young thoroughbreds and breezed them to sell for the track. And I saw it all the time. It was disgusting, all the time. So you got to look at the backs. Can it be fixed? Yes, but make sure that the horse doesn't have kissing spine. What's kissing spine? When the spine is so damaged from impact, from poor riding, that the vertebrae, just like I think it's a slip disc on us, the vertebrae start pinching, which pinches the nerves, which is why the horse could be bucking, panicking, bolting away with you, just basically going crazy. A lot of bucking accidents like that are ill-fitting saddles and that are pinching, as well as the beginning of kissing spine. If you catch it in the beginning, you can prevent it from getting worse. But too often nobody pays attention to it and they punish the hell out of these horses. Okay, or the horse just gets passed on and passed on and passed on, and or goes to a kill pen. So wow, the feet are really important, aren't they? You can get the teeth looked at when you get them. Even if the teeth are in bad shape, it can get fixed. It's not a hard fix, okay? But the teeth control the way the horse moves too. Has so much to do with the pole and the top line, and so you have to be careful. You've got to look at those signs, and then you've got to look at, and I go through all of this in my OTTB course, and I really dive in deep with confirmation and what to look for in the Mastery membership program. So there's a lot to look at, isn't there? And a lot to consider. And again, I am not putting down any of our retired racehorse. I'm totally in support of all of that. I just want you guys to realize that most of those horses, if not all of them, they've hand selected. Okay, and they've hand selected and they're selecting based on a very well-educated eye and a lot of experience. Okay, it's not like you guys just going in and going, oh, I've heard that the thoroughbred makes such a great, I want to help the thoroughbred and I want to give it another life and another chance and another career or whatever. And I've heard that they're great horses, and they are all of that. But just know what you're getting involved with. You better know what you're getting involved with. I think I pretty much nailed it.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of questions. Everybody's just very interested.
Yeah, and
what you're saying.
Sabrina's going to be posting the course. It's been an amazing course. Now, let me talk about the 12-week retraining course, where we're looking at my 3 off-the-track thoroughbreds, but it's for any horse. The way that course is you're taking my mastery membership program, 90-day retraining, and we're just showing you one day out of each week. So you're not seeing every day, okay? And it's not a step-by-step curriculum like the mastery membership. Just know that these horses are going through the same program that the mastery offers, and you guys are seeing a review. Every Friday we film, so you guys could see how much they were progressing. And each horse, we showed each horse, and then we have a 4th video each week in this 12-week process that gives you a review of what we covered and what to look forward to. So you guys get tons of tips and strategies. Trust me, it's phenomenal how you get to see us work through every week. We're working through with each horse so many of your common challenges. Absolutely, from the horse not understanding the bit, how to be calm, relaxed, how to develop balance and collection and carriage, how to supple, how to back up. I mean, all these horses have so many mental and physical issues that keep them from being able to learn quickly. So we talk about all of that. So it's a great course. It's just a shortened version, big time, of the mastery membership. All right, well, thank you. Tomorrow we're gonna dive in deep about trauma and talk about what you need to do to resolve it. And this is for any horse, you guys. We're just specifying the OTTB and how to change negative behaviors. And then Wednesday, how we begin training. How do we begin the retraining process? What do we do first? How do we do it, and what do we do, and why are we doing it? Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Please leave your comments or email us directly with any questions. Thank you. May you always be one with your horse. God bless you. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.